everyone. Welcome to the video podcast of Product Manager Thought Collectives. Today there are 5 of us, and it will be a really fun roundtable. One thing I've heard from a lot of friends is that the job market is pretty challenging. So we have different perspectives. We have people from early careers, mid-careers, and also more senior level of folks here. So let's do a roundtable chat, and maybe we can introduce ourselves really quick. I'll go first. So I'm Yi Yang. I'm the host of this video podcast, and I actually changed my job twice last year. So from my personal experiences, I realized the most recent job change is a lot more easier compared to what people said about the job market. So that's why I want to hear how you guys feel about it. All right, Rachel, you can go next.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I have about 15 years of tech experience, 9 of which as a product manager. And also for the past 6 years, I've been a career coach and advisor for Columbia Business School and for Sego Coaching. Most noteworthy companies that I work for are going to be Meta and also a few startups pre-IPO. Most noteworthy are going to be Fiverr and Datadog. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Rachel. Chantal, do you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like Rachel a bit, I'm a typical kind of big tech PM. So I'm currently a director of product at a unicorn startup called LTK. Prior to that, I was at Meta, Amazon, Adobe, Microsoft. I pretty much worked in pretty much all the big tech companies. There's a joke that says that all of them besides Google. So I think that's one. I also worked at startups, right at Credit Karma when it was acquired by Intuit. And I had 2 of my own startups that were seed funded, and I grew it to 7 digits. So I've done a little bit of entrepreneurship, nothing big. Otherwise, I would probably not work for a company. But love the entrepreneurship. I love 0 to 1 and AI. So I've been working in that space for especially AI and consumer for 6 years. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you. Prajakta, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So, hey, this is Prajakta, and I do have a tech experience of about 8 to 10 years. I started my journey as a software engineer, and then I moved into the product management line. And I did work in the past with companies like Rakuten, eBay, PayPal, and I'm currently working with Apple as a contractor through TSG. So this is like my journey, and I did take a short career break for about 1.5 years in the middle to just spend time with family and just spend time with my toddlers. So I had 2 toddlers back then. So that was a good break. And then I just started back last 2 months back, working with Apple right now as a project manager and a product manager. I'm really glad to be here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your perspective. All right, Keanu, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, this panel is really esteemed. I just wanted to give everyone their flowers. That's amazing. So hello, everyone. My name is Keanu. I am currently a marketing specialist at Zillow. I am early career. I have about 2 to 3 years of experience within the marketing field. But as of right now, I am working in a bit of transition, so more to come. And I currently work very closely with product teams and also sales teams to essentially help drive connections throughout the funnel for Zillow Home Loans. Previously, I was at Twitter, and obviously I was a part of the massive layoff that happened there. And I went through a really tough job market, like many of you have alluded to, over the last year. So happy to be here and talk more about that.
Definitely. All right, thank you for your introductions. So now the first question is a little bit juicy. I think people have different experiences. Also, we're in different stages of a career. But I would love to understand, like, how long did it take you to find the job? When you actually either casually or more officially started looking around? And what are some common challenges that you have been facing? Or for those of you who have been career coaches, what are some clients-faced challenges? I can start first. So when I first got laid off last year, I think it took me about 2 to 3 months to find a job. And the second time, this time around, it actually took me about 2 months to finalize the offer and accept the offer. So that's why from my personal experiences, I felt, wow, the job market has been easier. So that's my experience. Anybody want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to add to this. I was laid off as well at Meta, and I think that honestly, this is what I was so interested in this actually podcast, because it was the first time that over 10 years working in tech, just like Rachel. You know, and actually Rachel and I connected, not partially because of that, but it was just like another additional connection point. But it was the idea that, you know, I've not been job hunting. I had not job hunt at all in my career. So for over 10 years in tech in the Bay Area, my inbox was like full of like inbound, you know. And I thought this is how it was, by the way. This is the funny part. I come from Europe. So for me, I was like, I guess in Silicon Valley, there's so many jobs. And, you know, I constantly reached out by different companies. Every 6 months, even when I was employed and in a junior job, I would start getting inbound. It's just like they had some sort of recruiters of like, I think an alert or something. And then when I was laid off at Meta, it was a really bizarre time. I was starting to explore some opportunities, for example, LinkedIn. But immediately there was not just a downturn for Meta, but it was just like a lot of other companies that was starting to entertain things with as well stopped. So Google and LinkedIn basically were like, well, right now we can continue the process. And I was like, what? Like it was the first time ever this had happened where I didn't have that inbound volume. I did not have any interviews that was interviewed. Like the positions I was interviewing for were kind of like being put on pause. So without a clear timeline, then I think you have all seen that also through the clients that we've all had is this idea that, you know, people apply to jobs and it's just saturated. And so for me, I put myself in a position where I've never actually job hunt. Like I've never ever had to do this before. So I think it was a very important moment to like revisit, wow, how do I approach this, right? Similarly to you have a new product challenge at work. How do you approach this, right? And what is the best path forward? And clearly for me, I quickly identified after, you know, probably a few weeks of job hunting that the whole applying online was not going to work out. You see on LinkedIn, there's like, I don't remember. I remember maybe sharing some of that with Rachel as well. Like I would see a position I would be interested in and immediately would be like 300 people in like 1 hour apply.
Yep.
And then another thing I started as a strategy was like I would reach out to a hiring manager, which is something I've done in the past. So while I never applied officially to a job, sometimes I just saw a role. And I have a bit, you know, we all have a decent network at this point in our careers, right? In terms of like you can find someone in that company that you kind of has a connection, and so you have a soft intro. And then that was harder too. Like while it was picking up, people were not responding in timely manner. They were like, well, we are actually currently already have so many candidates. We're going to first go with this first batch. The response rate was not the same, and the interest was not the same. So I kept asking myself, like, what had changed? Because like I was 1 year ago had like 6 companies offering me like insane positions with insane comms, insane, you know, conditions, and now I'm like I can't even get like an IC position, like a senior and IC position. So it put me in a position where I was like I had to revisit like what matters to me, how do I approach this, right? Think it all from scratch.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to find the current job, which you are the product director for?
Yeah, probably like I would say 2 or 3 months. So it was like after I got laid off. I mean, you probably, if you ever been laid off in your career, it's a shock. I mean, I've never been fired in any job. I've always been a good performer. I did not see that at all coming. Super massive shock. To be honest, I had to like take some step back and like take a breath, try to digest that. And then it was around, you know, the holidays and stuff. So I was like, I'm just going to take a break during that time and like just come back. And so I think I just started looking around that time. So I probably was like, February when I started looking again, and in March I landed my role. So I think it was 2 months. About 2 months, About 2 months. But that's because I already had thought during that time about the strategy. So I think overall it was like 3 months, because you gotta think about, am I gonna approach this? Like right away after I got laid off, you know, we'll all get into crazy mode where I'm like, God, I need a job right away. What's happening? Like,
you have to take a deep breath and reflect.
Like, you go frantic. And I remember the second day after I got laid off, I started applying to jobs. Like, I'm gonna get this, and then I was like, this may not be the best approach. Catching myself like in the act of like trying to fix this quickly, and like fixed it, because you do feel like, you know, layoff, like there's something wrong with you. You know, you're like, what happened? What did I do wrong?
It is definitely a journey for me to go through. So I think you and I, we have like 10 plus of working years experiences. How about for Keanu? For you in the job market, you're earlier in your career. How long did it take you to find a job in this market?
That's a really good question. So I would say it took me about a year of seriously looking to find a job in the job market. My experience is somewhat like Chantal's when I got laid off. Really, it was really a shock to me. I didn't necessarily know what to expect. I didn't know what was to come next. But what I was seeing was the current theme on places like LinkedIn was that everyone was getting laid off, it felt like, and I felt like the world was on fire. So my gut reaction was to told me that I should probably just take a break. I don't feel like I'm really pressed for finances. Let me just take a break. Let me wait till it all blows over. But just so happened that that wasn't necessarily the best approach, as we're still seeing layoffs happen every day, and there's so many talented folks in the market looking. So that was a huge learning opportunity for me, as I should be more proactive when I think about my career. But also with that is I knew that I was experiencing a bit of burnout because during my time at Twitter, I was really hitting the ground running, being that was my first out of college experience. So I really did want to take that break, and I'm happy that I did. But it did put me a few steps back when it came to me actually searching for a job. And I realized I didn't necessarily have a plan. I felt like I was unclear of where I wanted to take my career. I felt like my network wasn't necessarily primed and in a great place for me to leverage them to find that next job. And I felt like my experiences and skill sets were not defined as well. So all of these things did not help me at all. But it was a huge learning experience, and I'm confident that if I'm placed in that situation now, I would be more calm. And also, just touching on what Chantal has mentioned as well. Chantal, please forgive me for mispronouncing your name. But I did find myself in a bit of a negative cycle because you find yourself in a place where you just sit and apply, and it's not working out, and you end up not taking care of yourself. Well, this was to happen to me, but it doesn't help you because if you're not taking care of yourself, how do you show up when it's time to interview? So it didn't help at all falling into that cycle, and it really took me a lot of grit and courage to pull myself out of that. But also it took some of my mentors to just tap back into and reach out to and just be authentic and share what I'm experiencing and where I am currently, and they helped me find my way out of that. So I'm really blessed that's how it worked out, but that's just a little bit of my journey.
Yeah, thank you for being very open and honest talk about this journey. I think this market is definitely tougher for people early in their career because you have a lot of talented people who have a lot more experiences and they're willing to do more with less pay compared to before. So it's uber competitive for early career folks to, you have to compete with the influx of talents. So Prajakta, I know you have taken a career break. So from, the time...
Keanu's point, taking a break as well as like early career, it's something similar because I took a break and coming back after almost a year and a half was tough for me to I had to prove myself like, okay, I can still, be there at the same, position. So sometimes I think I did, it took me like approximately almost 6 to 8 months, I should say, to like really be like serious. So I used to apply a lot, but I think I felt like something which helped me is like referrals and hiring managers directly reaching out, because applying on LinkedIn is great, but I felt like it was like so many people, in that pool, and how do you stand out? And I had I was pretty much open to that fact that I had taken a break, and I had written in my resume as well. So I felt like, maybe my resume was not like, in the top 10 or top 20, which the recruiters filter out. So finding a job after break was like, I feel the toughest for me, given the fact that when I used to talk to the recruiters and I mentioned that, some recruiters really appreciated that. And some were like, okay, you have a break, so we have better candidates right now because of the job market.
Yeah.
I felt like that was something which kind of hurted me. I was like, okay, I still have to find. But I think, I feel like the right people will really find you, right, at the right time. So I tried to just be patient. I used to have like 3 months sprint, find job, take a break of 1 month to just like let go what went wrong, reflect out what can I improve, and then do better. I did get some feedback that okay, maybe I have to downgrade my position and look for a one level down so that I can level up my chances of getting. It was not really convincing for me, but I was like, okay, but I still wanted to be, at the same position which I was before, or like one level up. So I still try to apply for one level up or the same position. And I think it took me a longer time, but I kind of got what I wanted. So it was just a game of patience and trying to just hang in there and get it up.
Yeah, definitely. I can really relate to the point that sometimes some recruiters, they be a little more narrow-minded, right? If they see, hey, there's a gap on your resume, and said, what are you up to? But in reality, people have different priorities, right? There are people who are burnt out from work, people who might want to travel a little bit, people want to take more time with families or take care of their family members. I think we should really normalize the career breaks in this market. All right, Rachel, so you have been a career coach, and you also have been switching jobs. So how long did it take you or your clients, where you have seen, from the cases you have seen, what is the normal range of time? I guess there's not a normal, but what do you see typically? How long does it take people for to find a job?
Yeah, so for myself, it took about, once I was thinking about it, I wasn't impacted by the layoffs last year. I was impacted. I actually left Instagram out of my own volition to join a startup. That startup didn't work out this year. They laid me off, as well as all of the product team. And then if you're asking me how long it took me, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back into tech or if I wanted to go career coaching full time. For me, it took about 2 months. So I do have an offer. I am starting at a place. I'm not saying what it is, not to jinx it. It took about 2 months. But if I'm looking at clients and if I'm looking at industry trends, it depends. If you have a FAANG or a strong brand on your resume, it's going to help. But it can take about 4 months, I think. Earlier career is much harder, and that can take even up to a year. If you're not in product and if you're not an engineer, like supporting roles at FAANGs, I think those were the people who have the hardest time. People who got promoted but were not product managers, data scientists, or engineers, for them, it can take even longer than a year. And for them also, I think the salary change is the biggest shock, because for them, the salary drops are the biggest. H-1B people, we didn't speak about that, but on an H-1B visa, you have to be employed and you have about 60 days to find a job. Those people had to make the biggest changes, or essentially needed to find different ways to stay and figure out their employments. And at some point, it makes it very hard for them to hire. Down leveling, as you guys spoke about, that's something that happens. And I've seen myself that a lot of companies were reaching out to me to roles that I wouldn't even consider. And, for people who are still working, that's interesting, because the employer's expectations when they're interviewing are so high, and it takes so much time to prepare for those interviews once you have the assignments and all of that. People who are employed just don't have time to invest in those things. So what ends up happening in this market is that the employers are inadvertently prioritizing the unemployed people over the employed people by virtue of the complexity of the hiring process itself.
That's something I didn't consider before. That is a good point. Right, okay.
When you give an assignment that takes somebody a week, for example.
True. Yeah.
One thing I was going to add is to what Rachel said is, so I've been coaching some clients on also who got laid off, I think by sharing my experience and having people reach out. And one thing I did notice that was quite shocking to me, especially lately, is I have some friends who are still employed and were actively reached out by recruiters from big tech for roles while the position is not available or shown. And I'm not talking about even director. I'm talking about lead, PM, or they're not published or public on LinkedIn. Or if they are, they're not responding to any messages, but they are actively reaching out to people who are currently employed. So this is not something I did see at the beginning of the layoff last year, but this year I have friends who I'm we talk with some friends regularly in terms of hey, how's it going? How's your job? And they're I'm still at Meta, whatever, and I'm I have a bunch of inbound, for jobs from X and X company. And I'm like, that's absolutely insane. Like, I know people who are trying to get an interview who are really qualified at that company, and they're not able to get a response or any sort of interview. So it does seem like there's definitely some stigma that's my perspective around being laid off and being unemployed. And I think that stays true even when I'm thinking about all my other past roles. Like, I've always jumped to my next position when I was still employed, right? I didn't stop working and I looked, or I was always like, oh, this opportunity came up. And I still feel like that is something that happens in this market, where you're still like more valuable somehow when you are employed, especially behind a good brand. That's my theory as well, by the way. While I do get inbound now, I do think that when I was behind an Amazon and Microsoft and Adobe and eBay, like, kind of, brand, I was now perceived as more attractive, even though some of the work I'm doing now, I think, is 10 times more impactful, potentially. Some of the things that I've driven in other companies are potentially more known, just given the impact, the ownership, the complexity.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting that I've noticed.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not know that before. Right. So for some people, for some recruiters, for some companies, if somebody had a job, they would say, oh, you look more competitive or more eligible. But in reality, there are talented people in different situations. So the next question is, if you have to roughly estimate how many jobs you apply or your clients apply before accepting your current role, is it possible to give a rough number? So for me, the first time I searched job last year, I think I was very focused on having the top brand. It has to be the tier 1 company. It has to be a certain comp goal. So I only applied between 50 to 100 companies. So of course, because the pool was smaller, the conversion was also lower. But the second time around, I didn't care about the name. I'm open to see if the company has interesting work, if the people are great, if it looks like, the PR of the company overall is good, I would just apply. I actually did most of the cold applications. And then for the companies I really, really want to join, I would ask referrals. So I would say I applied about 300 jobs the second time around. And then my conversion to going to on-site and then converting to offers are actually a lot better, just because I 3x my pool of applications. So I'm curious for you guys, maybe Keanu, you can start first. So how many jobs, if you have to give an estimate, did you apply, whether it's cold application, whether it's referral, whether it's a LinkedIn outreach?
So I would start by saying I recognize there are two ways to think about job applications. One, you can sort of throw whatever at the wall and see what sticks. So you can be more targeted. After I realized that I wasn't getting much traction, the conversion rate was typically very low. I found myself throwing a lot of applications out, cold applications at that. But I really understood that wasn't me, and I started to refine my application process. That led me overall to applying between, I would say, up to 250 to 300 applications, maybe a little bit more, but I sort of stopped counting because I found like there's not too much volume in counting. It's more about how can I apply, get into an interview, and make it to the second round of the interview, and so on and so on. So think about conversion rather than the number of applications I throw out.
I actually want to pause on this point of how many companies you apply for. And this is one of the things that I advise my clients against. Applying coldly is really a black hole. And I think when you apply to many companies, you have an illusion that you're doing something. And then when you keep getting rejection, or most likely are going to be ghosted, it just is really soul crushing. So I actually think the game is to try and get as close as you can to the hiring team and to the recruiter before applying, because applying to masses of the cold applications, usually that's not what converts to an offer, but it also leads you to feel like something's wrong with me because people aren't responding. And the real reality is it's because there are thousands of people who are applying to the same position. So for me, for my own search, I ended up being very selective. I counted in preparation for the podcast, me actually reaching out to companies and applying, I only did that to 4 or 5. And I was approached by about 7 or 8. Moved to offer phases with 2 and ended up taking 1. Last year, it was very different. I probably applied myself to maybe 1 company. I had probably double digits of companies reaching out to me. And it was a very different situation relative to what it felt like to me this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think the only reason I brought up the numbers, I also lost count, but it's more of giving the estimate. But I would say for the companies that are more serious that I reach out to referrals would probably be around 20 to 30. It's more serious. The other companies, they could be startup, Series C and above. I do code application. I just want to test out to see, hey, does my resume stand out to them? So actually, surprisingly, a lot of code application turned, just from my own personal experiences, like turned to interviews. So that's why I think we have different perspective, but that's why the roundtable is awesome, that everybody is different in this job search. For Prajakta and Chantal, I guess if you have an estimate or like the ballpark, or either the companies you're more serious with, or the companies that's been reaching out to you, or if you have to give a number estimate just for our audience, if they want to hear about a ballpark number, how many would you say?
So I think it depends. Like, I think that the probably inbound is like definitely less, but they're more senior positions. So I would say that probably like, I don't know, there's been like 4 reached out this year, but they're all like really senior roles in big tech companies, like definitely big opportunities. There are definitely some chats where people like ping me on a LinkedIn post of like, you would be a good fit for this or something. But I think that that's kind of like the current inbound that's happening. Last year for me, last year, right? So I've been a year at this job, a little bit over a year. So I would say last year it was pretty bad. And I think in terms of like inbound, there's not, maybe it's because I also had a baby and was disconnected from LinkedIn, but I don't, it was not my usual inbound. I normally would get probably like, I don't know, like Rachel said, probably like 10 or 15 companies a year reach out. So that's one. And in terms of like, I think that jobs that I apply, so when I realized that approach was not going to work, it was very demotivating. I do not know, I've never applied like you, Yang, like 300 jobs in my life. Like I don't have that kind of resilience and ability. Just I usually like to track on spreadsheets, and so if I had to get 300 and my response rate or conversion would be like 10%, I think it would affect my mental health. So what I've done, I think, is similar to what Rachel said, which is I was more like thinking, what do I want to do? So once you get over the fact like the market is not going to give you easily, I think the first realization I remember still was the roles, or like, how usually there's this dance of like you work as a director at Amazon, therefore you go to VP a startup, or you upgrade when you go to startup and you downgrade to big tech. It seemed to me that dance was over after the layoffs or like the recession in tech. And if you were a director, you would be lucky to get a director role in a startup. That is something I realized really fairly quickly. The second realization was the amount of money that I was making. You guys know I'm big tech, and over the past 6 years working in big companies was just not a standard. And so I had not been working at a startup for the past, like, I don't know, like 80 years, something like that. I think the last startup was Credit Karma, and we got acquired by Intuit after 1 year there. So we didn't feel like I started for very long. But I didn't realize that, when you get it, they call it golden handcuffs for a reason, right? So once you are used to the kind of compensation, going back to startup is a little bit of a, like, definitely an adjustment.
It's a reality shock.
It's a reality shock. I have 3 kids, so it's definitely one of the things that you think about, right? You're like college. Each of my kids is clearly like Tesla, if not a Ferrari, in terms of cost. In terms of when you think about the cost long term. So it makes you think about certain things, right? So that's what it is. The third realization is the title, right? So what we say the transition is like, would I take a principal role or like a IC role or downgrade? But if I do love this, to your point, Yang, I think you made, right? If you like the job, you like the people. And I think this is where I came to a realization that, and I think it goes hand in hand with my post yesterday on LinkedIn, which is we get lured by title, scope, and comp. And that's how most people make decisions on their job. But you stay because of the growth, because the learning and the culture. And that is what I was trying to actively, when I was interviewing for positions, would be try to like literally forget, okay, if you put the money aside, if we put aside the title, okay, and all this, the things that society tell you should be like, that give you status, and we care about my well-being, what is it like? And so I gotta say that I'm really happy that I went that path, because and I think I heard some burnout conversation earlier. I was really burnt out at Meta. I didn't realize that, and that's why also it took me a while to want to go back to it, because it was like, is of, you know, the pressure that you get. You in both Amazon and Meta have insane performance culture, so you constantly trying your best across so many things, and on top of it, and then you have kids, so everything is conflicting at the same time, like all your life. So you start realizing like you're like burnout. So I was like, what do I need in my life right now? And then it took me a while to come to that realization and really coming to terms. One thing is to tell yourself, I don't care about title. And another thing is to say, I really don't care about title. I think that's
true. That's true. Yeah.
That jump in your brain, it's not easy. That's one thing, at least for me and my clients, I realize that people are like, no, but I don't care about the title. I'm like, okay, so now you're a senior PM. And they look at you like, well, I don't know if I can be a senior PM. And
yeah, that's right. That's true.
I feel I agree to Chantal, because I followed the same process, because after I took that break of a year and a half, I did take some time to really reflect that what is it that, you know, I want, and what is it that I don't like, you know, really care about. Like, so it was definitely the title, the money was this, you know, deprioritized in my list. It was mostly about the kind of work I get and the team with whom I will work. So whenever I used to talk with the recruiter, it was mostly this discussion, like who is going to be in the team, how do they report with the engineering, the marketing, sales. So, you know, what is the interaction, and also like mainly about the work, right? So something which I would, you know, love to do. So that's something I kind of prioritized more than like, you know, the leveling as well as the amount of compensation I would get. So I think it just made it easier for me to like apply that way. So I had started, my route was like, you know, trying to like just apply on LinkedIn. And that's when I think after 1 or 2 months, my husband told me that, okay, this is not going to get you like what you want in your head. So you have to like think about like, you know, what is the work you want to do, and apply for those companies, and then try to reach out to recruiters and, you know, referral, try to strengthen your resume, maybe try to learn more, invest time in learning. And then, you know, whenever you, you know, interview for a job, try to also reflect on like what went wrong, what you could do better. So I think he told me like, you know, invest your time on that rather than like just, you know, applying more. So that was something, the feedback which he gave, I really felt that, okay, it did help me a lot. So I think to Rachel and Chantal's point, I felt that worked for me as well, to like apply for a particular set of companies through recruiters or referrals, and prioritize on what you want rather than just going for everything.
100%. And it's so funny that people keep doing this. Like when I have people, you know, I've coached like 15 people the past few months on intro, and it's like every single time I talk to someone and they're like, I'm like, stop doing that. Like, you know, and they keep doing it. They feel like there's some sort of anxiety and need to check a box. But to your point, energy like a bowl. And the bowl, you can use it for different purposes, right? But if you are applying to roles without the depth, you diffusing your energy becomes like your bowl becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So you have less core energy to put the best effort. The reality is that someone will come in, but then imagine like Rachel's passionate, let's say, about pets, right? And I'm applying to that company, and I just say, I'm so passionate about pets. But Rachel, because she truly is passionate about the pets, you know, and like the dog or whatever, she's like, sending a picture to the hiring manager of the dog and being like connecting with everybody in the company, and she's like inviting people.
Putting more effort.
Yes, because it's genuine. And so, and also for me as a manager, by the way, in this market, I also want to give that perspective. Is when like when a candidate sends me a cover letter, be like, I've been passionate about fashion, and I go to the LinkedIn and they said, I hate fashion, you know, I'm an example, but you know, I'm like,
if they don't show the true side on their social media,
or you know, like I've been, you know, reaching out to like people, I've connected with this person. I even had one person reach out to me on the intro, which is the interview, to talk to me about position, about how passionate they were. So they paid me to to basically like tell me how passionate they were for the position if I could connect them. And they had already connected with a couple of employees and they were ready. They were on point. I was really impressed.
So they did their homework, basically.
I mean, it's like in this,
I see.
Exactly. I think Prajakta said it. Like in this market, the passion, the real authentic passion will show.
It really
up.
shows, yeah.
It could be like, yeah, this company just does like, I don't know, like it's a unicorn Series E and they do like machinery to put like paintings on the wall or whatever. And you'll be like, yeah, I would love to hear more about it. But in this market, unless you really care about the paintings on the wall, with whatever technology, is a crazy analogy, but that's what we got today. And it's gonna be kind of obvious, unfortunately, So I think it's the most important thing in this market. That's why I tell people is be authentic. Be yourself, introspection, figure out who you are, what you care about, and then your words, your passion, that energy will come through and will make you more successful.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think another important thing which I felt is also it was hard to say no to some things. So I interviewed pretty much for good startups as well, and they did have like a better pay and better package. And of course, I loved the work, but I had to also step down and say no because I knew my kind of limit or maybe the boundary. So the way I thought is like in the next 2 to 3 years. So I wanted to keep a work-life balance with, spending time with family as my kids are really small. So I was like, okay, will I be burnt out if I take this offer, or will I, go? It's better for me to be steady right now and, walk longer rather than just sprint and get tired and burnt out. So that's the choice I also made. Like, trying to say no also is something which is kind of difficult, but if you can say that, it would really help you also to make the right choice at the right time.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. I think if I had to summarize, so it sounds like in this market, you have to, number one, go above and beyond, right? Do your homework. Truly, whether it's more polished cover letter, whether you can reach out to the mutual connection to get introduced to the hiring manager, you have to show that why you can outperform other candidates. There could be thousands of them. The second is that you have to stay true to yourself, be authentic to what matters to you. It could be title, or it could be TC, total comp, or maybe it's a culture, it's a people, it's a growth opportunity, or it's an area, the vertical you're interested in. So one last question is that what are some kind of tools or resources and tips that you have for people who are trying to find the next role? So for me, there is a Chrome extension called Simplify.jobs. It's one of the best because my strategy is a little different from you guys. I think you guys are more selective. For me, because I try to play the numbers game, right? I code apply both everywhere. And then for companies that are more serious, I ask for introductions. So I use that Chrome extension for any code application. There was one time I put my son to sleep, and then I just applied 50 jobs over 1 or 2 hours a night. I was like, hey, let me try to play the numbers game. So that Chrome extension, just you pre-save your information, the name, the emails, all these demographics questions, and then takes like less than 5 seconds, submit the application. So that was my strategy. It worked well for me. But I would love to hear from you guys. Maybe Rachel, you can go first. What are some things that you found useful, where you recommend to your clients to help them in this job market a lot?
Yeah, so I think what I call this to my clients is networking broccoli. You need to eat your networking broccoli, and you need to eat it in moderation, because similar to cold applying, trying to reach out to connection can also be a bit soul crushing. So identify how much, and a lot of it is moderation. How many people are you going to reach to per day, and time box it, and just do it like something that you don't really like eating but is good for you. So I think that's number one. I think the second thing that I think it's really important for my clients and for people I work with and friends, it's like people aren't negotiating enough for their salaries, and they're afraid to do so because they don't have a BATNA. Darn it, I forgot what it stands for. Better alternative to negotiation agreement, right? Because they don't have a competing offer. They're afraid not to negotiate. I'm not sure if this is a tool, but reading books about negotiations and identifying your value proposition. I also think that the first conversation that you have, whether it is with anybody that you're going to have that is going to turn into a referral opportunity, you need to treat it as an interview. So what you want to make sure, I call this the 90-second pitch for my clients, is you want to make sure that you have 30 seconds of what's amazing about you, 30 seconds about what's amazing about the company, and then 30 seconds about why together it's magic. You don't necessarily need to spill it out in 90 seconds, but you need to make sure that these three things by the end of that conversation are very clear to the person that you're working with. And then I think burnout is a big thing, like treating yourself kindly and figuring out a way to keep yourself centered and keeping your chin up. It's really, really hard. So I'm not sure I'm giving really like tools like you did, Ian, but I'm more thinking about how to prepare, how to think about things.
I love that. It's a mentality, right? That's the networking broadly is such a cool concept. I have to borrow that sometime. Yeah, I think that's a great advice, is that you have to balance yourself, right? Every time you interact with somebody, it could be an opportunity lead to the next job, or maybe like co-founders, right? So you have to really think about what makes you unique that you want people to remember you for. All right, Keanu, do you have any tips or resources or mentality you want to share?
Yeah, so I think I'm with Rachel. I don't think I necessarily used any tools in my last job search, but on a few points that she touched upon with networking, love the networking broadly piece. I think it's also helped me to try to connect with the people that I network with on something else other than work. So I actually went to a conference last year, and I actually connected with someone on bowling. And I have a way in to start a conversation with that person from here going forward, because we connected on a more personal level rather than that of a professional or business level. And I think they would be more inclined to offer me not only advice, if they don't necessarily have a connection or a job that I might be able to be a great fit for. I think it's also very important to be very clear on what your skills are, just touching on what Michelle did again, and where you want to take your career. I think there are so many different areas you can take your career, so many different industries and businesses as well. But I think if you are very honed in and focused on what those things are, it's easier for you, that authenticity that Chantal spoke about earlier, to shine through. And I think that's what it's really about. All in all, what I learned is hiring is not fair. Like, there's so many different variables and factors that go into it. And however you can think critically about making yourself stand out and making yourself be remembered is how I am thinking about, careers and job search. A few things that I started doing. Well, one thing I started doing that helped a lot is during my conversation with the hiring manager, I try to probe, or even before the conversation, I try to probe on what the team is actually working on at this time. And I try to frame my mentality or frame my responses around what they might be working on, so that I can sort of interject myself into the space that they are currently operating in. So far, it has helped a lot. And also, curiosity has led me to, if I hear something and I want to dive into it a little deeper, it has helped me to dive into it offline, but also follow back up and reach out even after a specific interview. That has helped me a lot as well.
I love that. So basically, you do your homework, right? You put yourself in their shoes, say, hey, here are the challenges they could be facing. Here's how you could apply your past experiences to help them fit into their puzzle pieces. Prajakta or Chantal, do you want to talk about the tools, resources, or mentality shift among your job search journey?
Yeah, I think just adding to Keanu and Rachel's list, I think three important things which I felt helped me is like doing like mock interviews. So there are a lot of websites which help that. So I use Peer Product Management, a website where I could practice questions which I was not really good at. So that helped me a lot. Second, I think I did have some mentors. So from different companies, I used to talk to them and get feedback after any interview. And they just helped me improve my skills and my weaknesses. So I used to talk to them and it helped me reflect more. And the third important thing which I felt is like playing by your strengths. So if I have like maybe 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses, so I would try to, so given that I have to get, say, my job in the next 6 months or so, I would strengthen my strengths more. Maybe I used to invest maybe 60% of time on my strengths and 40% on improving one of my weakness. So that kind of like helped me more, kind of like it gave me the acceptance that, okay, I'm not good at this, but better at these things, so I try to strengthen them better, and then I still work on my weaknesses. So that was the strategy which I used. And finally, I would definitely prioritize on, like, if things are not working out, doesn't mean that you're not good at it. It just means that you have to, just be patient and don't go in the negative, trail. Just
Right.
yeah. So
Yeah, definitely. I think finding your own community of support, whether it's like interview partners, whether it's your mentors, people can give you feedback, that helps a lot. And then it goes a long way as well, right? I think it's almost like you need to have a buddy to vent to. Like, I got frustrated when sometimes the role I was so close to getting the offer, it got canceled, right? And there's like last minute change that you never expect. But if you can work with somebody, almost like a job search buddy, right? I heard of the concept of like never search alone, right? So if you have a group of people that could be in similar stages, they're looking for jobs, or maybe you can critique each other's resume. I think that would really be beneficial for like career and stuff. Yeah. All right, Chantal, do you want to go last? Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the broccoli, and I love all the things you guys said. This is great. I'm also learning, which is what I love this. So, so I don't have broccoli, I don't have veggies, but I teach my clients this, which is the circle of love. So it reminds me of the Lion King. When they have Simba and they have all the people around, it reminds me, I don't know, that inspired me these days. With 3 kids, I did watch the Lion King alone too many times. That's my inspiration these days. And so the way I approach this is, you gotta figure out, and I think, Yang, you said it, like, or I don't remember if you said it, but like you were saying some companies you're really interested in, and some others you're cold applying. So exactly. So the first thing I tell my clients is figure out what are the level 1, level 2, level 3. So level 1 are companies that you really want, and you want to apply the 6 layers of the circle of love that I call. The level 2 are the ones that you kind of are interested, but you still, like, you have a concern in one of the top 3 priorities. So it's like either, you at first have my clients rank their priorities, so it could be compensation or title's not there. Like, one of them is not there, but 2 out of 3 is there. And the third is like, really, I've never thought about working at this company, but at this point, to your point, Yang, let's just try to play the game. And so I try to tell them, invest the energy on, like, in a certain portfolio way, so a certain amount every day on this one, level 1, level 2, level 3. So if you do that every day, then you're going to be in a good place, because you are playing the portfolio strategy, which I use in product management, which is some big bets, low confidence, right? Some low bets, high confidence, etc. So that approach has worked for a lot of my clients. 70% of my clients have found jobs within 3 months. So it's pretty awesome. I've coached around 110 in the past year. So I think that, this works. So in terms of like the strategy, the level of love, the level 1, something that works incredible, by the way. And so this is something I started using as a strategy after I couldn't find a job. After I got laid off, it was like, the market's really tough. I would ping people from a company I would be interested in. I'd be like, hey, I would love to hear your thoughts. We're both in the industry, whatever. I would find a connecting point, either an article, a post, something on the Instagram, whatever. And I'd be like, hey, I would love to take you for coffee. And these days it's virtual, so I can send you a boba or coffee at your house, and we can just like 15-minute chat. So let me get you coffee. And people, surprisingly, most people said, yeah, sure, would love to. And then they would be like, but don't worry about the coffee. So while I did have a budget to invite people for coffee, 80% fine. And then that act, they felt like, no worries. And they felt the fact that they were declining the coffee, I think, make them feel like I'm doing something good for someone else, or I don't know. That works. Yeah. Magically ended up having these coffee chats without coffee. Thank God, because otherwise I would have like 10 coffees a day. Like crazy. And ended up having this chats, and then normally I would not start a conversation ever. It's psychology, I feel like 101. If you are like interested in someone, like dating, you're like, I really want you to be my husband, on the first call. That would scare people, right? So the way I approached it, like I would go on the call and be like, hey, I saw that you have also 3 boys or whatever. Like, do you have any tips? Because like
personal level. Yeah.
And then at the end of the conversation, I'd be like, I'm not actively looking. Or sometimes I didn't say I was laid out. Like some stuff, like don't lie, but also don't disclose all the information like an open book right away. It's like when you meet someone, you don't. I have, whatever, epilepsy. You don't start a conversation like that. I don't have it, by the way, but what I'm saying, like just like you don't start a conversation like that. The same way you do not want to start a conversation with, I just like got fired, or I just came back, Prajakta was like, I was unemployed for 2 years. You don't want to start with the negative. You want to say like, I'm whatever. I'm not sure I'm interested in this opportunity, but I would love to maybe, do you know the hiring manager? Because I'm really looking for a good hiring manager. So I would start a conversation like that. Like, hey, so do you know anything about this person or this team? And they'll be like, yeah, sure. I mean, they're close friends of mine sometimes will be like, and you'll be like, okay, well, no pressure, but if you can introduce me, at least I would love to have a conversation. I don't know if this is going to lead anywhere. And 90% of the times they'll be like, if they enjoy the chat with you, which this is where the Rachel 90-second elevator pitch, because then you got out.
That's a really good networking tip. Yes, thank you so much for your time. Yeah. Again, thank you, Rachel, Chantal, Prajakta, and Keanu. It's awesome meeting you guys and having a very interesting discussion. And happy Friday.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Bye.